It's time for the Brainiac Minute. Get ready. Here's your host, John Boyce. Monday.
A father went to say goodnight to his 7-year-old son, very well knowing that his son had trouble sleeping. It was their nightly routine. He entered the dimly lit room where his son waited under his blanket. With the first glance, the father could tell there was something unusual about his son tonight, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. He looked the same, but had a grin that drew from ear to ear. "You okay, buddy?" the father asked. The son nodded, still with the grin, before saying, "Daddy, check for monsters under my bed." The father chuckled a bit before getting on his knees to check, only to satisfy his son. There, under the bed, pale and afraid, was his son, his real son. He whispered, "Daddy, there's someone on my bed." Happy Halloween, guys. All week, instead of trivia questions, we'll have some scary stories for you. I hope you enjoy Halloween as much as I do. I know all of us here at WANT enjoy Halloween, so if you do as well, please be safe, don't eat too much candy, and have a good time.
Tuesday.
A hiker decided to go on a hike by himself, something he wasn't very used to. The whole day was normal. Trees and bushes engulfed his surroundings. He enjoyed being outdoors in the mountains. Nothing seemed strange to him. That was until he was making his way back to his car. He figured an 8-hour hike was long enough, and the sky was getting dark, so he needed to get back fast. What was odd was how much he didn't recognize the trail back. He began to panic. Night was starting to take over, and all he had was a flashlight and no clue how to get back. Before too long, he realized it's too late and too dangerous to keep going through the forest. He began to worry that he would have no shelter for the night, when almost, luckily enough, he stumbled across a broken down cabin. It was dark, and it seemed like no one had visited it in years, but he knew that it was the only place where he could rest until daylight, especially since his flashlight was running out of battery. He knocked on the door a few times and no one answered, so he let himself in, where, strangely enough, a perfect bed fitted for one person awaited him in the center. So he went ahead and got himself comfortable in bed. As he tried to sleep, he couldn't ignore the collection of paintings around the room. Portraits of strange-looking people all peering at him, each wearing a smile that sent chills up his spine. Normally he would have left, but he was just too tired, and eventually he fell asleep. The next morning, he got up early and was shocked to see there were no paintings around the room, only windows.
Wednesday.
On the banks of the Red River in Robertson County lies the sleepy town of Adams, Tennessee. With a population around 600, you might think the area gets overlooked. However, for many decades, the town has captured the attention of ghost hunters, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts from all over the world. Why? Because it's the site of the infamous haunting of the Bell Witch. This is the first of 2 parts of the legend of the Bell Witch. From 1817 to 1821, a man named John Bell and his family were harassed by a mysterious and invisible spirit now known as the Bell Witch. According to the legend, the witch had the ability to speak, shapeshift, and be in multiple places at once. See, at the time, the Tennessee frontier was a wilderness with dense forest as far as the eye could see. Neighboring family homes were usually miles apart from one another. The strange occurrences began at the Bell family's farm when John Bell came across a dog-like creature. He fired his gun at the animal, but it quickly vanished. Soon after the incident, strange disturbances inside the family's home began, with loud knocking noises, gnawing sounds, and the sound of chains dragging across the floor. We'll stop right there for today, but expect part number 2 tomorrow during the Brainiac Minute.
Thursday.
And now for the second and final part of the legend of the Bell Witch. Eventually, the witch's activities became physical. It began striking, pinching, and pulling the hair of some of the family members. However, it was John Bell and his daughter Betsy who received most of the abuse. The witch then began speaking and having full conversations with members of the family. Oftentimes, it directed insults and threats at John Bell. When asked about what or who the witch was, it would respond, "I am a spirit. I was once very happy, but I have been disturbed, and now I'm unhappy. Some of the family's neighbors and friends experienced unusual encounters with the witch as well. One incident involved a family friend named William Porter, in which he supposedly grabbed a hold of the witch and attempted to throw the invisible entity into the fire. He was unsuccessful. The massive weight and terrible odor of the witch were too much for him to bear. After 3 years of nonstop attacks and harassment, John Bell's physical health started to decline. He became bedridden and eventually passed away in December of 1820. His family believed that the Bell Witch had caused his death by giving him some kind of poison. However, he was 70 years old in the early 1800s. It was even said that the witch had crashed the funeral and sang cheerful drinking songs during the ceremony. After his death, the constant hauntings and abuse lessened, then eventually stopped altogether, just as mysteriously as they began.
Friday.
Carving pumpkins, trick-or-treating, and wearing scary costumes are some of the time-honored traditions of Halloween. Yet the Halloween holiday has its roots in the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, a pagan religious celebration to welcome the harvest at the end of summer. The tradition of carving jack-o'-lanterns originated in Ireland using turnips instead of pumpkins. It is allegedly based on a legend about a man named Stingy Jack who repeatedly trapped the devil and only let him go on the condition that Jack would never go to hell. But when Jack died, he learned that heaven did not want his soul either, so he was forced to wander the earth as a ghost for eternity. The devil gave Jack a burning lump of coal and a carved-out turnip to light his way. Locals eventually began carving scary faces into their own turnips to frighten away evil spirits. Wearing scary costumes came about to avoid being terrorized by all the evil spirits walking the earth during Samhain. Lastly, the act of going door to door for handouts has long been a part of Halloween. But until the mid-20th century, the treats children received were not necessarily candy. Things like fruit, nuts, coins, and toys were just as likely to be given out. Trick-or-treating rose to popularity in the 1950s, and it inspired candy companies to market small, individually wrapped candies. People began to favor these out of convenience. But candy did not dominate Halloween until the 1970s, when parents started fearing about anything unwrapped.
This podcast was produced from the Brainiac Minute. Airs daily on WANT 98.9 FM at 9:10 a.m. and 4:30 p.m.